Highway 61 is the title of a story by Scott M. Peterson. I thought I would get to this before midnight, but, it's nice. I got it after midnight. You can hear it in Ukiah as well as Fort Bragg, and that's probably even better. It begins with a quote from the song Out on Highway 61 by Bob Dylan. Oh, God said to Abraham, kill me a son. Abe said, man, you must be putting me on. God said, no. Abe said, what? God said, you can do what you want, Abe, but the next time you see me coming, you better run. Well, Abe said, where do you want this killing done? God said, out on Highway 61. Scott Peterson writes, by all accounts, Frank E. Warren of Mendocino City was a very nice man. A greenhouse just west of the savings bank in Mendocino is something he built, but his occupation was way up in Fort Bragg as Indian agent for the Mendocino Reservation. From the moment he got onto Uncle Sam's payroll, Warren had it made. The natives at that time were Pomo, and thanks to white people with guns, they were homeless. So Uncle Sam sent money to care for them, all of it to Mr. Warren. Warren estimated the Pomo population there at 2,000 in 1856, so cash was just pouring in. The Pomo were pretty helpful, too. Supplies came to Fort Bragg from Willits, then named Sherwood Valley. One of the regular haulers was a Pomo named Muley Jack, who carried a 100-pound wagon wheel on his head all the way from there to Fort Bragg. And when soldiers wouldn't pay, he headed back with it just the same way, prompting soldiers on horseback to go after him. They recovered the wheel halfway back to Sherwood Valley, but never paid Muley Jack what they owed him, a cotton shirt. Warren's boss was Thomas J. Henley, who served as the superintendent of Indian Affairs in California from 1855 to 1858. Henley was a lawyer from Indiana, and thus nobody to be trifled with. Warren's subagent was H.L. Ford, a man who obviously couldn't count, putting the number of Pomo on the Mendocino Reservation in 1856 at 375. Not that it mattered. By 1872, the sad lot had all been herded on foot to Round Valley, where they were cared for by a new Indian agent. That was a Methodist minister named J.L. Burchard, who in 1876 blamed Pomo problems on bad white men, then pushed for all reservations in California to be consolidated to spare everyone great embarrassment. And, of course, we all lived happily ever after. Around 1994, some exceptionally nice people started showing up here, like Bill and Sue Gibson at 44901 Pine Street in Mendocino, both listed NP on their Mendocino County voter registrations, followed by Gary and Lynn L. Johnson at 5735 North Highway 1 in Little River around 1997, both registered Republicans. And finally, Jerry and Pat Thomas at 32100 Middle Ridge Road in Albion, who are also registered Republicans. Like Frankie Warren, the new arrivals saw opportunity right off the bat. There was money to be made, all of it on the backs of the poor in Fort Bragg. At the Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center, a nonprofit that before they arrived hadn't got into Uncle Sam's pocket, making it ripe for the picking. The Johnsons had problems in their previous locale. In 1986, Gary submitted a white paper to the city of Walnut Creek that looks like a rather long-winded ransom note. Gary was a cop there. Linnell had worked as a secretary in California Congressman George Miller's office for a while. Miller, a Democrat, obviously had no idea that Linnell was a Republican when he hired her, which is probably why she wasn't there for very long. Gary left the police department under a cloud of corruption after a fellow police officer, Lester Garnier, was assassinated in his Corvette. That was in 1988, so Gary and Linnell definitely needed a change of scene. Bill Gibson was already at MCHC when the 2001 Form 990 was filed. MCHC. Gary Johnson showed up as a treasurer in 2004, but didn't spend any time on it, but then got promoted to vice president/treasurer in 2005 for 1 hour a week. In 2006, Johnson got replaced by Bill McIver, who spent no time on the job either, but everything changed in 2008. Where Bill Gibson's wife became a board member, and Gary Johnson rejoined the board at a stunning 10 hours a week without being treasurer. That was left to Jerry Thomas, who did it in 5 hours. At the same time, Gary's wife joined the board, naturally. Once the 1%ers gained control, everything fell into place, except for maybe those it was intended to serve, the poor. You can see that in the annual filings, Form 990s, the well-heeled don't want you to see. And just as Gary Johnson's proposal to the city of Walnut Creek is packed with lurid detail, so are these. Starting with meals versus revenue. MCHC's Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center's revenue has exploded over the past 5 years from $233,252 in 2011 to $860,304 in 2015. So you'd think the meals would increase too, but they haven't. In fact, they've gone down from $27,184 in 2011 to $22,935 in 2015. So homeless people actually get less from Gary Johnson's operation over time. Well, Gary Johnson gets more, all from his scenic getaway in Little River. It's the same with employees. Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center started out with 18 of them in 2011. Now it has 31, none of which appear in staff photographs, of course, but still manage to draw a paycheck, all while MCHC's clients remain invisible. Their executive management is doing very well these days. In 2011, they earned nothing. Today, it's $72,692 a year and climbing, which is odd since the number of meals MCHC serves is falling. Public charities like MCHC are required to file paperwork every year, including a Form 990 to the IRS. Ditto for the state of California, which also requires a registration renewal fee report, something that says whether or not MCHC receives federal funding. Gary Johnson filed the one for 2015, swearing under penalty of perjury that MCHC hadn't gotten any, while swearing under the same penalty on MCHC's Form 990 for that year that it had gotten $426,158 in federal funding. Then on Schedule O at the end, Mr. Johnson declared that MCHC board members wouldn't be reviewing either form. The board's main function at MCHC is to give the appearance of respectability, opening every board meeting with a prayer. Bylaws there prohibit immoral, unethical, sinful, illegal, or shameful behavior, but apparently that doesn't apply to perjury. They also require 4 officers at MCHC, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, yet the MCHC website says there's no vice president there today, and now Linnell is the president. Hopefully Ms. Johnson can do a better job than hubby did, but she hasn't so far. By the end of February in 2017, MCHC had reportedly run out of money for its extreme weather shelter, so it passed the hat in a GoFundMe campaign, something that appears to have blown up on her. GoFundMe is social media. It's open to the public, which includes public comments, along with something that Gary and Linnell don't like, transparency. Thus, when certain Fort Bragg residents started asking questions, the campaign got shut down. The unraveling for the last round of poverty opportunists in Fort Bragg began with a writer named John Ross Brown, who came to visit Henley at the Mendocino Reservation one day in the summer of 1857. So, okay, we're jumping around in time here a little bit. Brown did something Henley didn't appreciate. He asked questions like where Henley purchased reservation supplies and for how much. Brown discovered that Henley had bought them at rock-bottom prices in San Francisco and then sold them to the reservation for top dollar. So Brown did what writers are supposed to do. He ran a story on it titled The Coast Rangers that appeared a year later in San Francisco papers. That was the end of Henley's career in Fort Bragg, and Warren's too. Burchard got outed by a Catholic priest named Luciano Osuna, who came to visit the Pomo at Round Valley Reservation in 1872. Seeing how the Pomo there were starving, Osuna did his job, writing letters to his superiors about it. Well, it bothered Burchard, so he had Osuna arrested and charged with insanity. Both the post commander in Round Valley and Justice of the Peace in Ukiah wrote letters to the bishop commending Osuna, which triggered a pissing contest between the Vatican and the Office of Indian Affairs, and got Burchard fired. The lesson for everyone here is seeing how those scumbags got busted. An investigator for the Office of Indian Affairs discovered that Henley and Company had jacked the price of reservation food up 400% and kept the difference for themselves. Now look at MCHC revenue over the past 4 years versus how many meals are being provided there. What you'll see is the same type of increase. Payroll was another cause for alarm to the OIA investigator. Salaries at Henley's operation had somehow gobbled up 35% of expenses. Look at how payroll is doing at MCHC now. It's running 67% of expenses. No wonder the amount of meals served keeps dropping. More important is how few of Mendocino's homeless MCHC can provide meals for. According to Executive Director Anna Shaw's last press statement on the matter, some 530 live on the coast, but 22,935 meals served twice a day for 365 days a year translates to only 32 mouths being fed at MCHC, leaving many of Fort Bragg's poor to go hungry. Then there's the matter of income inequality at MCHC. Only once in the last 5 years did average staff pay there exceed California's minimum wage law, suggesting that at least some of the 31 employees reported there are the very same people they're feeding. One piece of history bothered me here, the tale of Muley Jack hauling a 100-pound wagon wheel all the way from Willits to Fort Bragg, which is a distance of 35.3 miles. That didn't seem possible, so I contacted Jay Jones at Custom Wagons out at Nicholasville, Kentucky, to double-check my weight estimate. It turns out I was wrong. Wooden wheels for freight wagons weigh nearly twice what I'd estimated, 150 to 200 pounds, according to Jones. Pomo weren't particularly large people either, maybe 150 pounds or so for a mature adult male, so was that even possible? Jones reminded me that Himalayan Sherpas are about the same size as Muley Jack would have been, and carry 200-pound loads all the time. Sherpas carry weight as soon as they can walk, he said, so they can carry well over 200-pound loads, making them ideal pack animals, particularly during the California gold rush when four-legged animals were in short supply, just like two-legged animals are now during the California green rush. Any local business owner will tell you how difficult it is to find and keep employees. MCHC does that with a giving garden, something that takes from others and gives to, well, itself. You can see that on its website, where its annual budget is a mere $74,400 to produce 150 pounds of vegetables, which works out to $500 a pound for produce, while it promises homeless workers a stipend to do all the work, just like Frankie Warren did to Muley Jack with the cotton shirt he kept for himself 16 decades ago. Just to make sure all that giving was being done, I fired off an email to the address indicated on MCHC's annual filing, asking how many of those payees, if any, had gotten W-2s reporting whatever they'd actually received so far, along with where they'd received it. The Social Security Administration sends my benefits by direct deposit. Did the homeless farmers receive their pay like that? Or was payment sent to MCHC's address? That could certainly be cleared up by sending me copies of those W-2s to see if any had the name Gibson, Johnson, or Thomas on them. I never got a response. That's how it is out on Highway 61, where everything's a race to the bottom. Not in bucolic Mendocino, no way. The nice people here go north of the Casper Bridge for that, seeking advantage wherever they can find it, especially in Fort Bragg.